Sounds True presents The Jewel Tree of Tibet. Session 3 with Robert Thurman.
This is session 3, and this I'm calling, according to a Tibet's own metaphor, the wish-granting gem tree path. So let's begin by visualizing that. Let your habitual identity and self-image go into sort of meditation pose comfortably, unless you're driving. In that case, keep your eyes open and on the road, and just let it happen incidentally. So close your eyes, or partially close them. Sit in a balanced posture. Breathe evenly and gently. Open up a field of vision above your forehead. Not looking with the eyes, but looking somehow up in the top of your forehead, like where the third eye would be if you were a fierce deity, in the center of your forehead. And looking up that way, sit comfortably. Let yourself feel vast and spacious, calm. Let the world dissolve around you. Whatever your habitual town and building and body and era and country and planet and continent, let these all kind of dissolve. Let yourself be sort of unsure where you are. Let it become a kind of gentle, spacious voidness, feeling of freedom floating. And then arise from that on top of the world, on a grassy bluff looking down over Lake Manasarovar, a giant crystal lake. You can barely see the far shores. You're at 13,000 feet. The air is clear and pure. There's fluffy clouds in the sky. In front of you is an island offshore, a jewel island with all kinds of mythic creatures prancing around, a kind of garden. The center of the island is a giant tree, springs forth from the earth, like Jack and the Beanstalks type of thing, like going way up into the heavens, out of sight. This giant tree is glistening, made of jewel substance, luminous, like a Christmas tree, except in place of the Christmas ornaments, there are flowers, thrones, and on them are seated enlightened beings, human and divine, and each of you can create your own tree here. You can have Buddha. If you're a Tibetan Buddhist, you would have your own personal Lama, or Guru, or mentor, who would be dressed in the form of Guru Rinpoche, or Dzongkhapa, or Sakya Pandita, or Milarepa, Gampopa, Karmapa, or His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And then in his heart would be the Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha of 2,500 years ago. And in Shakyamuni Buddha's heart would be a little Vajradhara with his consort of blue, the sort of divine Buddha form, male and female. If you are a Christian, you might have Jesus there. Perhaps in his heart would be God on his throne, Perhaps Mary would be there. Perhaps in her heart would be Jesus, and perhaps in Jesus' heart would be some vision of God, esoteric vision of God. If you're a Muslim, you could imagine Muhammad being there. Or as a Muslim, you can't have an icon, but you can still think of the Prophet as he was historically in your own imagination. If you're Jewish, you could think of Moses, or one of the great rabbis, Rabbi Akiva. If you're Hindu, you could have Krishna, or Rama, or Sita, Radha, the goddess Shakti, Shiva. If you're a Taoist, you could have Lao Tzu there, Zhuangzi. Or if you're a humanist, you could have Plato, Socrates, Pythagoras, whoever is meaningful to you, or you could have all of them there if you want to have all the pantheon of all the great teachers. You could have your teachers of this lifetime, your third grade French teacher, your history teacher, your civics teacher, whoever was a meaningful person to you who opened your eyes, he taught you the alphabet, taught you how to do this or that, made you understand something new about your life, about yourself. Your parents could be there. In the presence of such a person, you feel secure. You feel they have a superior knowledge to yours. You feel that you have learned from them, you could learn from them. Whoever you want. I myself think of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, indivisible from all the teachers I've ever had, very kind teachers, Geshe Wangyal, Tara Tulku Rinpoche, Serkon Rinpoche, Ling Rinpoche. My own personal sort of history, all the teachers, I see them all fused in one being who looks like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In a way, having thought of all of them as his emanations. And then he is fused with Tsongkhapa, and then he is fused with Guru Rinpoche, and then he is fused with Shakyamuni Buddha, and then them fused with Manjushri and with Vajradhara. That's my own pantheon. Don't worry if some of them aren't familiar to you. You put whatever is your pantheon so that you feel that you're in the presence of your highest mentors. And then you feel that they really are there. You don't just think you're having an unstable vision of them. You think of them as really being there in this wish-fulfilling gem tree, giant tree that fills the whole space in front of you, radiates jewel lights to you, and these beings are there and they're looking at you and they're saying, how nice. So-and-so is just meditating there. They're trying to pick themselves up by their own bootstraps, trying to contemplate, become more aware. There's traveling the path to enlightenment. What a wonderful thing. And they smile down at you. From their glistening smiles, light rays radiate and flow toward you. And those light rays are diamond, crystal, coherent light, laser, liquid, gentle though flowing, ruby, emerald, topaz, sapphire, the spectrum flowing toward you, amethyst, liquid jewel light flowing into you, filling you up with light, making you feel energetic and buoyant, lifting you almost from your sense of heaviness. driving out of your mind your usual worries about your own self-identity and self-image, like I'm so-and-so, I don't only understand this much and that, your own self-imposed limitations, your own inner voice that talks to you and you think it's your voice, or you think it's your mind that is thinking. These thoughts and habitual monologues inside are washed away by this Niagara of jewel light that flows down from this gem tree and fills you up in a glowing, glistening being. And you become your whole potential. Any sense that you have that, well, I'm going to listen to some teaching, I'm going to meditate, but of course it's going to be me doing it, I'll come out of it afterwards, and then maybe I'll go back later, but I'll be the same old me. That whole attitude dissolving, just floating out of you in the form of sort of dark, shadowy, little scuttly thoughts. And just sort of dropping your thoughts and just embracing the light and feeling good in it. Feeling everything is possible, feeling open to new understanding, feeling open to seeing your own faults in a new way, and rising above them, and using them to bring yourself into new virtuous qualities. And then you recognize around you, you've noticed in the field around you on this bluff that's looking over the lake, out of which the great giant jewel tree springs. You notice that all beings are around you, all in human form, and in the front rows are the beings that you recognize, and towards your left are the beings that you like and you feel attachment to. In front of you are the beings that you don't know and you have a kind of ignorant disinterest in. And to the right of you a little bit are the beings that you don't like, and you're quite aware that they don't like you. In fact, just thinking of them being there makes you feel nervous and ill at ease and sort of restless and paranoid at first, so that you feel aversion, even anger and hatred towards the beings in the one direction. You feel ignorance and disinterest towards the beings straight in front, and you feel attachment and fondness toward the beings toward the left. And you immediately think, why am I reacting like this with these beings? The ones I like now, I like because they're nice to me and they're friendly and I get along with them and they do nice things for me. If they started being really nasty to me over a regular period, I would pretty soon move them over to the right category of beings I don't want to see, beings I don't like. So in fact, my liking them is just because they're nice to me. The beings in front of me, I just simply don't know them. They might be the nicest, most beautiful people, with great things, and I might become very attached to them if I got to know them. And the beings to the right of me who I don't like, they're just mean to me is what it is. Maybe I was mean to them, maybe they're getting revenge. In fact, I know now that some of the beings in the like category have been in the not like category. And some of the beings in the most not like category were very dearly liked in the past. So there's nothing intrinsic in these beings that makes them that inherently likable or inherently unlikable. It's just my attachment and aversion and my ignorance that separates the three beings into these three categories. So we try to sort of equalize, be a little less attached to the attached ones, be a little less averse to the disliked ones, and take a little interest in the unknown ones, realizing all of the great potential that they have. And these beings, all of them, all three of them, are looking at you. And they're seeing you begin to glow. They're noticing that your usual form changes a little bit and you start to radiate and you start to luminesce. And then the light flows out toward them as it overflows from you. They don't see the refuge gem tree. They're not looking at it. They're looking at you. But in fact, the light of the wish-granting gem tree from you flows to them. And they feel happy, those who like you. They feel interested and intrigued, those who don't know you. And they feel annoyed and competitive, those who know you and dislike you, but that gives them a little stimulus and they feel challenged and quickened and awakened. And so back from them comes a kind of stimulating energy, whether it's competition or whether it's interest or whether it's fondness and love and gratitude. In any case, an energy loop comes back to you of encouragement, just as you send energy to your mentors of feeling loving and secure and friendly and peaceful and grateful for their blessing. So this is the setting within which we set up the path of meditation in each of our sessions. We can sometimes even keep it alive in our daily life, have a feeling that this heavenly host is there in the sky. The culture of Tibet was sort of like that. Our sessions here together, we're calling on this retreat Tibet's wish-granting gem tree, because the whole of Tibetan culture became like this after many centuries. So many people were visioning in their meditation sky their mentor, Guru Rinpoche, or Atisha, or Tsongkhapa, or Sakyapandita, or Milarepa. They were visioning in sky such beings as looking after their welfare, as concerned for them. Tara, Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattvas of compassion, the angels of compassion. And so they began to feel that these beings were always present in the space around them. And then to symbolize that, they went onto the mountains and they carved Om Mani Padme Hum, the mantra of great compassion, the letters on all over the mountains. And they carved giant Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and angels and mentors and lamas and deities and things in all the hills and mountains, so as you would ride around Tibet, you would be reminded all the time of the presence of all the enlightened beings shining upon you and lifting you up out of your ordinary negative habits and putting you into the mode of seeking your own evolutionary fulfillment, of seeking happiness, of seeking to fulfill your deeper wishes for yourself and for all beings. And they created this wonderful culture out of that, where everything became some sort of way of reminding you of your highest aim as a human being in life. So this is the environment that we're dwelling in during this retreat. And we have withdrawn from the other environment of sort of the normal American pantheon, where we have B-52s overhead. And satellite dishes with big corporations radiating poor sitcoms, and with politicians in the White House, and with inadequacy and with hungry, starving people all over the planet, and violence and hatred everywhere, religious and ethnic and so on, and a planet that is being polluted and that its future seemingly lost almost, ozone layer depleted. We drop out of all that one, and we're in this different realm where all the bodhisattvas are hovering in the starship, wish-fulfilling gem tree, and radiating their light around us so everything is possible for us in this context. Now that we're in that, we now turn to the path. When we meditate, or when we practice, or when we learn something, or even when we spend the day, in the morning, we should always think about our motivation. Why am I here giving this meditation? Is it just because this is like my job? Is it because I want to become rich and famous? Is it because I want to be healthy or have more fun? Is it some sort of self-centered purpose like that? Is it in fact something I want to get out of it right now in this life? Or is it because I care for all beings? Is it because I want to become enlightened and awakened for the sake of every being? Is it because I'm not anymore content to be just temporarily happy myself as an egocentric, separated person, but I want to have the real deep happiness that comes from knowing that others I love are happy, and finally knowing that everyone is happy? This motivation, which is our main topic of today, the motivation of the Bodhisattva, the will to perfectly awaken and become perfectly wise and perfectly compassionate and loving, so as to be capable of helping all other beings to become perfectly happy and perfectly wise. This is really the motivation with which I should do whatever it is that I do, even every day. I should remind myself of the fundamental opportunity of the human being, my fundamental opportunity as a free human being with access to the teaching of freedom. And I should be motivated, everything I do, oriented toward that for myself and for others. Inevitably creeps in, well, I just want a little more this or that, or I think I should, or I just want to go through it, I want other people to think that I'm doing something, or whatever it is. And all these lower types of motivation do creep in to our attitudes. And then unfortunately, whatever that motivation is, it condemns whatever we do to only serving that. And if it's a lower aim, then it will only have a lower result. And when we're learning, we should always try to avoid the faults of a learner. It's a certain type of pride, thinking I already know it all anyway. We should never think that, even if we've heard it 1,000 times. We should think, I'm going to learn something new, I'm going to see it deeper. I don't really know what it is all about. I just heard the words. So we don't have the flaw of the covered vessel. However much beautiful things you try to put in the covered vessel, it just falls off and splashes on the floor, spills, because the vessel has a lid on it and nothing can go in it. And then the second flaw of the vessel we should avoid is the leaky vessel. By having no mindfulness and no memory, we hit in one ear and out the other type of thing. And our mind is wandering and we're paying no attention. And then whatever grade the thing is poured in that vessel, it just leaks right on out. Then the third flaw of the vessel we should avoid is the poison vessel. It doesn't leak and it's open, but inside are mixed the poisons of egocentric greed, delusion, and hatred. And we're doing something to gain power, to gain revenge over some people, to be more powerful. We're doing something to gain profit, and so we're mixing it with greed. Or we're doing something to confirm our ignorance. We're just sort of finding new ways to rationalize our existing ignorance. So that would be the poison vessel. So we want to avoid all of these things. and be receptive and be attentive and mindful, motivated by learning for realizing the aim of our human life, which is to become free and wise and loving. With that thought in mind, now we run through our arpeggio. Remember, we're learning these stages of the path as it were a kind of arpeggio, like a set of scales that you learn as a musician. And so the first set of scales lead up to the mind of transcendence, which we achieved yesterday. And there are four main notes in that arpeggio. And the first is appreciating our precious human embodiment endowed with liberty and opportunity. What a wonderful life we do have, free of major defects, with access to the great teachings of liberation and omniscience and awakening, with the time and the understanding and the assistance and the community that helps us put these into practice. So remember that note. Quickly hit it. I don't want to go back into it, because we have a lot of other things to do today. And the second note is the immediacy of death. Remember that we shouldn't go on acting like we're going to be here forever, like we habitually do. We should recognize that we definitely will die. Just quickly sort of subtract ourselves, identifying ourselves as our body-mind complex that we attach our name to, subtract ourselves from the relationships that we're in, realize that we will die out of them. Possessions, friends, loved ones, name, fame, all will be gone. Superficial knowledge, all will be gone. Then reflecting the certainty that we don't know when we will die. So we could die at any time. Every moment could be our last. And then finally remember that when we do die, it is only the Dharma, freedom itself, reality itself, our knowledge of that reality, how we have incorporated those teachings of the nature of reality into our life through openness and generosity and patience and so on. Only those subtle, most inner qualities in our inner core of our being, in our souls, as it were, they will be the only thing to benefit us when we do die. The second note, combined with appreciating our precious human life, the fact that any moment could be the last, and that the essence of the moment is the deep inner condition of the mind, we turn to the third one, where we interconnect that moment, that infinite moment, to the cause and effect of karma, seeing how everything about our current moment is determined by all of our past evolutionary actions of body, speech, and mind, and that everything positive about it come from the positive actions, and what is negative about it is created by our negative actions. And therefore every action that we do now, even the subtlest thought, which is a mental action, as well as a word, as well as a physical action, leads to an infinite result in the future, either positive or negative, meaning that each little tiny thing in the present moment is infinite in its impact. Tremendous intensity in this, tremendous mindfulness of even the subtlest, most element in our being. Fourth note is the inadequacy of all egocentric life states, including being a god, including being a king, including being a billionaire, including being a star, including being whatever it is we think would be great to be, but envisioned as an egocentric being, even including being a Buddha. If we think of a Buddha as some big being who gets to sit on a throne as some sort of a big shot, is sort of the biggest egocentric being or something. Buddha, meanwhile, being a totally selfless being. But we have notions of a Buddha naturally because we can't imagine a selfless being. It's unimaginable to us to think of how we could be here and yet just as well be all the other people here at the same time. And be all the people in the town and all the other people in the city and all the other people in the country and the state and the universe at the same time as being responsibly a particular person here, or several different persons here. That's inconceivable to us, such a vast cloud-like being. So naturally we're a being that is enclosed in our own little envelope of our senses, our eyes and ears and nose and tongue and skin, and with our mind imagining things a little more than that, but still we're basically enclosed inside this sheath of skin, this sheath of senses, and we imagine all other beings are like that. But here we reflect in our fourth note on the inadequacy of all states of such a being. If I think I'm something inside here, and the rest of the world is outside there, it will always defeat me. My struggle with the rest of the world, all the other beings, will always be a losing struggle. And this is the teaching of suffering. This is the teaching that samsara, the cycle of life based on self versus other, based on the false habit of absolutizing the self, thinking I'm it, I'm the one. This is the deep teaching of the suffering of all of that. This fourth note is therefore the deep acknowledgement that all states, even the seemingly highest states, are inadequate or fundamentally suffering. From the point of view of the higher happiness, relative to the higher happiness, the absolute happiness, the supreme happiness of enlightenment, of wisdom, of the wisdom of selflessness. Once we realize these four notes, preciousness of our human life endowed with liberty and opportunity, the immediacy of death, an essentiality of the soul at death, the Dharma soul, interconnection through cause and effect of evolutionary action, subtle and coarse, of everything infinitely, and the suffering and frustrating inadequacy of all relative states of the egocentric being. Contrary to getting really super depressed, as you might think, we gain a great relief. We feel a wonderful, buoyant energy of transcendence. We excuse ourselves from all paltry ambitions to be rich or famous or powerful or muscular or beautiful or whatever it is that is just a temporary state or even divine. And we give up any ambition towards any of that. So therefore all of the things that we do to go and make money, to go and be famous, to go and be powerful, to go and have possessions, to be liked by many people, all of this sort of anxious activity that we nervously and expectantly do all the time based on these ephemeral goals that are ultimately worthless and ultimately unsatisfying. We're free of all of that. We can drop out. We can just pick up our begging bowl and just hang out and go on vacation from all of the worldly obligations. It is a tremendous thing. That is why monks and nuns are actually always smiling and cheerful. And why they have a kind of presence. People like to hang out with them because they don't have the same set of wants and desires that people who are seething with worldly ambitions have. So anyway, this is the mind of transcendence. We just kaleidoscoped what we achieved yesterday. Now you know it. So now you have it. And now you're kind of a free person spending your free time here today. Not because you're getting this or that, but because you're free. And you're just like enjoying the prospect of greater and greater freedom. So you feel happy. You feel relieved when you think of your friends and you think of your ambitious friends studying and working and sweating and saving and investing and nervously looking at the internet. You realize that they're like insects in a way caught in a treadmill. With little ants in an anthill busily rushing, grabbing something and rushing over to the other place. Or bees running around grabbing pollen. Endlessly buzzing nervously, getting something. And you feel free of that. You realize the worthlessness of all of those aims. You feel relief. And you feel pleased because you really respect yourself now. You really respect your human embodiment, the evolutionary achievement that you are, the awareness that you have of the suffering nature of any sort of habitual state, and the sense of interconnection, and the optimism that nothing that you do, even if the planet does get destroyed next week, if you are in a positive frame of mind, if you are aiming at the positive, you go on infinitely. You'll be reborn in another one. And you'll be in a better state because you'll be more generous, more loving, more wise, more open. So you feel really cool. And then you begin to look around, and now we come to the stage of the path that we're focusing on today. Spirit of enlightenment, of love and compassion. But it cannot be developed. People say, oh, I'm going to be a bodhisattva, I don't want to be a monk. Oh, I don't need all that monastic stuff, all that Hinayana, people will say, that individual vehicle, or even people will call it the lesser vehicle or something derogatory like that, which never was a name of monastic Buddhism, the great, profound, and crucial tradition of monastic Buddhism. But Hinayana only referred to an attitude of some monks and nuns in ancient time. When it occurs in the sutras of the Mahayana, in the scriptures of the universal vehicle, as they call themselves, the great vehicle on which all beings are to ride to reach enlightenment that Buddha created. The expression individual vehicle refers only to those monastics who deny that the Buddha had such a great vehicle. So it doesn't refer to every Theravada monk and nun at all, or anyone who is a monk and nun. This is an error. Like there was something lesser about being a monk and a nun. It is fabulous to be a monk and a nun. It is one of the great things one can do for the world, to be a monk and a nun. And for yourself. A person who really loved himself, it's like, I'm so fabulous a being that I'm going to protect myself against wasting any of my time making money, paying mortgages, producing children, growing food, any sort of thing. I'm not going to waste my time doing that. I'm going to just beg some food from people who like to do that. There are some who do, who don't think that there's any other thing they can do, although I'm going to quickly disabuse them of that. Even as they're feeding me, I'm going to say, well, you really shouldn't be working to earn the money to make this food to feed me. You should join me and just drop out and be on vacation and seek freedom, because that's what the human life is for, is seeking freedom. Of course, many people will not do that anyway. Even I urge them to. But they'll feel a little more free that I'm seeking freedom, in fact. And so talk about self-love and self-appreciation. True self-appreciation is, why would I waste my human brain playing a video game? It's a fantastic engine of freedom and openness and awakeness that I have. Why would I waste that? Not meditating on ultimate freedom, not cultivating love and compassion, not being transcendent and dropping out. Why would I spend any time not doing that? So being a monk and a nun is being good to yourself, avoiding many sufferings and many anxieties and many preoccupations that people have. And they spend precious moments of their human life doing nothing evolutionarily developing, but just like making money or being more selfish or fighting with another or whatever they do. So there is no Hinayana as a bunch of institutions or something like that. Absolutely not. Tibet, in fact, is the biggest Hinayana country in the world. It has the most monks and nuns and monasteries. It's the only one, if you're going to wrongly call Hinayana that, I'm being ironic. There are more Theravada monks and nuns in Tibet than in all the other so-called Theravada countries combined. Hinayana only meant, individual vehicle only meant some person, whether they were a layperson or a monk, it didn't matter, who had an idea that Buddha only taught a certain group of teachings, and that Buddha didn't teach the great teachings of love and compassion, except incidentally in terms of meditating on boundless love and so on, but didn't actually teach the Bodhisattva vehicle. The Buddha who is referred to even in the Pali literature as a Bodhisattva before he becomes a Buddha, somehow didn't teach the Bodhisattva vehicle. So some people have that attitude. They become literalistic and they dogmatically attach to some texts that are purported to be the text of the Buddha, and they say, oh, another text can't be. Buddha couldn't have done something round the corner that we didn't see. And then that's called Hinayana, means kind of narrow-minded attitude. Thinking that the Buddha is not this amazing being that can do whatever it takes, that teaches anything that beings need to be liberated. Not the founder of a dogmatic institution, some religion, but the ultimate teacher, the ultimate educator, who, having realized that beings can find their freedom and make their life fulfilling and achieve their happiness by learning only, by cultivating their understanding only, was forced to be an educator. Couldn't just be a prophet, although he did do prophecies. Couldn't just be a founder of institutions, although he did found institutions. Couldn't be giving sort of orders from God because he found out that the gods didn't really know what to do. the gods asked him what should they do. The gods were his disciples as a teacher. So the kind of attitude that says, oh no, Buddha only taught the thing that I know that I heard from Buddha. That's what Buddha is. Who think they know the Buddha. That's the narrow-minded attitude. And there is otherwise no such individual vehicle. All of Buddha's vehicles were for everyone. So now we come to the heart of the Buddha Dharma, perhaps. If you wanted to say one word of what is the essence of Buddha's teaching, of the Enlightenment teaching, the phrase of Nagarjuna, the great master of 2,000 years ago in India, which Atisha, the Bengali teacher who went to Tibet 1,000 years ago, said was his favorite expression of all expressions. Shunyata Karuna Garbham. In Tibetan, Tongnid Ningje Ningbojen. The most beautiful word in Tibetan too. Ning means the heart, Tongnid Ningje Ningbojen. Meaning freedom, the womb of compassion. If there's anything that is the motto of Buddha's revelation, of Buddha's gospel, his good news, it is freedom, the womb of compassion. Karuna, or Ningje, compassion. Too many people think that all Buddha had found out was that the world sucks, that everything is horrible, and life is horrible, and that the nirvana means the extinction of life. And therefore these people, myself included, feeling frightened of all the pains and sufferings of life, and particularly when they go beyond the modern materialistic view that there's only this one life to suffer in and then you become nothing. And when they realize that there's an infinite continuity of your awareness, and you can never get away from your awareness, and therefore there's the danger of infinite future lives in which you'll suffer. We become so frightened of that idea at a deep subliminal level that we long for obliteration. We long for oblivion. It is selfish, but we think there's nothing we can really do for others. We just sort of mention to them, hey, why don't you get oblivion too? Because we're just all going to suffer together, nothing we can do for you. And so let's jump into nirvana and we'll be gone. And then we meditate or we do this and that practice, and basically we think that what Buddhism is some kind of marvelous yogic meditative technology of achieving an altered state. We can call it awakening, we can call it enlightenment, many grand things, but we basically are waiting for the day when we will be obliterated. We talk about vast empty space, and we think we're going to leave the problems of life, of interconnection, of bumping into beings and things and stubbing our toe and having obligations and complications. And we think, wow, wham, I go infinite space. I reach infinite solitude, infinite quiet. I'm just, nobody bugs me forever. What a great thing. I know so many people in different centers. I used to tease them. We had a great session. It means like an intensive meditation retreat. And you really were into it. And you stopped your mind and you stopped your body. And then the only big bring down was the end of it where, darn it, you were still there. You had to get up and wash the dishes, change your underwear. So you felt you hadn't made it. You didn't succeed. You hadn't achieved that enlightenment viewed as an obliteration, as an absolute obliteration. Call it freedom, call it nirvana, call it what you like. Basically, you're envisioning it as an obliteration. This is completely wrong. This is foolish. This is breaking the basic law of the Buddhist view, the view of interconnectedness, which was Buddha's great revelation. There is no non-interconnected thing. There is no nothing. That is the essence of his teaching. There is no such thing as nothing. Nothing is the word for that which does not exist. Therefore, there is no such thing. Therefore, no one is going to become nothing. You cannot become nothing. It is impossible. It is a misexpression. It is a mistake. It is misknowledge. Precisely to get even a sense of how distorted our mind is working in our unenlightened state, we should think about how deeply we feel there is nothing. We want to meditate and enter nothing. We can have experiences as if we're in a realm of nothing, really concrete. And no, almost we had a conviction like it's a real thing in a place, and no one can convince us it isn't, it is said. It's very difficult. Once we really gain that conviction and that experience. But logically we can understand there is no such thing. And therefore any experience we are having is the experience of our picture of such a thing. And the fact that we can make a concrete picture of something that could not be pictured proves that we're living in a world of our own imagination, rather than that the world really is what we're imagining it to be. So there is no nothing nirvana. Emptiness is not nothingness. Voidness, freedom, these terms refer to precisely the fact that there is no absolute thing in itself within things, that is the essence of them. It refers to the fact, therefore, that all things are totally interrelated. There's nothing in us that is not related to other things. No mind that is not related, no speech, no body, no physical thing, no soul that is not related. There is nothing in us that is not related to everything else. That's what emptiness means. We are empty of any isolated essence, of any non-connected essence. We are free of any such non-connected, isolated, alienated essence. That is what it means. Therefore, enlightenment is realizing that. And therefore, enlightenment is realizing our inexorable interconnectedness. The vast space is nothing but the surface of the relations of all things. All of the interconnected things are emptiness. Therefore, emptiness is the womb of compassion, meaning that realizing that emptiness, we are freed of the delusion that we have carried from beginningless time, that there's an essence in us, an absolute one thing that's apart from everything, that is the real us, that we can sort of get back into and withdraw into and get away from all of the burdens of connections and obligations. And when we get rid of that sort of absolutized place of self, what it gives birth to is that we don't find an absolute isolated place of self, which is a nothing. Of course not. That's only the last trap. We break through nothing, which is our last reification in a way. We break through it and we find we are face to face with everything. Being face to face with everything, that aspect of everything that is most compelling of our attention are the other living beings. Especially the ignorant ones who are suffering, who think of themselves as something isolated from the rest of the world and are therefore in struggle with the rest of the world, who don't know their own emptiness, who don't know their own reality and freedom, and who think they are bound in their struggle to get away from their bondage of connection into some absolute self-center that is apart from everything. And they attract our attention because they are these points of agony and suffering. Even if they're human, this relatively relaxed or divine, if they're in the lower states, they're like deeply compressed, agonized suffering, which we think of in metaphors of burning or freezing or being crushed or dismembered and cut and severed and chopped. You know, like the hell visions. And so those beings who are suffering those things become completely compelling because our mind through emptiness expands vastly and embraces them as us. And their suffering is ours at that point, although fortunately, because we know reality, because we don't leave emptiness, because freedom is infinite, we're solidly within that emptiness in a way, or we solidly are that emptiness. Therefore we can bear being aware of their theaters of agony as if they were virtual realities. We know they are virtual realities, because we can therefore defy the supposed law of subjectivity by the fact that when we know the suffering of other beings, it's a virtual reality where we see them essentially, in a sense, free of it, while desperately writhing in their constantly self-reinforcing conviction of being trapped in it. Even all of their elements that are wound up in that tight tension still are ultimately space. They're free. It's like the space between the cells is like vast bliss. We see it in binary double vision in a way. We see them as suffering, realizing how awful it is for them, and therefore completely dedicated through compassion to helping them become free. And yet we're not dragged into their suffering because we also see a deeper reality within them as well as everything else of bliss. So here enlightenment is not an escape. Enlightenment is not some sort of obliteration. Enlightenment is fully being here now, but the now is of infinite duration, and the here is of infinite extension. It is not a here now that is an isolated, private moment of my own. It is a here and now that includes all the vast sky full of mother living beings. So that is Shunyata Karuna Garbham, voidness or freedom, the womb of compassion. And that compassion is our topic today.
This concludes part 1 of session 3 of the Jewel Tree of Tibet with Robert Thurman. Our program continues on the next CD. Sounds True presents The Jewel Tree of Tibet, Session 3, Part 2, with Robert Thurman.
So now how do we get this compassion, this bodhicitta? The will to enlightenment, or as I prefer to call it, the spirit of enlightenment. The mind of enlightenment, people say, but I like spirit. There are two kinds of this spirit of enlightenment. One is called the aspiring mind, or spirit of enlightenment, which is like the wish. I wish I could be a Buddha, a perfectly enlightened being, perfectly blissful and perfectly aware, so as to be able to help all other beings become perfectly blissful and perfectly aware. I want to be happy, and I want to be happy in such a way that I can make all other beings happy. It's somehow based on the acknowledgement that I can't really be happy, not perfectly happy, if anybody else is unhappy. You know, I can see a vast sea of bliss and blah, 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 and it's only virtual reality, their unhappiness. It still is their unhappiness to them, and I am them. And therefore my happiness is incomplete. No one is completely happy until everyone is completely happy. Therefore, the Buddhas are compelled to be inexhaustibly present to all of us. Their vows are still operative, that they will not be perfectly happy until all beings are perfectly happy. You're not excused. You still have to worry about me. We can think that way. the bodhisattvas don't mind. In a way, they do escape it because, as I say, they have that other vision that is a deeper vision, where they see we're already there in a certain way. Time is not a reality in the sort of concrete way of being 1, 2, 3, 4. All moments of time are interpresent in all moments of time in the enlightened vision. This moment contains every instant of past, present, and future of all beings. If I had the wisdom to see it, if I was a Buddha. The future is here now. The past is still here now. So, in a sense, one has escaped. One is really free. We don't want to deprecate the nirvana of the Buddhas. But then the amazing, inconceivable thing is how that nirvana is embodied in a present that seems to be caught in a specific flow of time and space with specific limited beings. That is truly the miracle of what is known the Nirmanakaya, the emanation body of the Buddha. When you become a Buddha, not only do you not have an end of life, but you become able to become present, to manifest presence as emanation, as incarnation, to infinite numbers of beings simultaneously. Your will of perfect compassion at that time can be perfectly present to everyone. The best way, of course, to be present to them for their sake is as a teacher. Because the best way that they achieve happiness is not just by some salve, some palliative applied from without, but by their own understanding opening them from within to their actual own reality. So they have their independent freedom themselves. That's why they say there's a lovely statement in Asanga Maitreya's ornament of the scriptures of the universal vehicle, the Maitreya, the future Buddha, where he says, there is not one Buddha and there are not many Buddhas. Buddhas are neither one nor many. You can't say there are many Buddhas because all Buddhas are one in their body of reality. They share the same body of reality, which is infinite and absolute. But you can't say there is only one Buddha because each individual being evolves to Buddhahood and enjoys their own communion with all other Buddhas in oneness. But they enjoy it individually. So in their form bodies, in their beatific bodies, each Buddha is distinct, so that your Buddhahood doesn't somehow subsume my Buddhahood. Shakyamuni's Buddhahood doesn't prevent us from the joy of our own Buddhahood. Even though when we achieve our own Buddhahood, we realize we are one with Shakyamuni. We are the same being as Shakyamuni, yet we individually enjoy being the same being, each of us. Isn't that lovely? Now, there are two major precepts in the Tibetan tradition, coming both from the Buddha. One is called the sevenfold cause and effect precept of mother recognition. And the other one is called the exchange of self and other. And the current person who is sort of the main holder of this line is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. If you want to know what animates His Holiness the Dalai Lama's common religion of kindness, as he calls it, basic human religion, not any particular religion, but the basic love that is even beyond religion, etc. That is all the teaching of Shantideva. The Panchen Lama put those together in an 11-step process. So that's what we're going to learn today. And the first of the 11 steps is called the meditation of equanimity. And we already did it in a way, and we do it every time we enter the refuge field. Remember where we are. I want to say one thing about meditating. I tend to say, let's go into meditative mode, and then I go on and I rant and I rave for several hours, and people are thinking they're supposed to be sitting rigidly without moving and getting aches and pains, and I don't mean that, and I apologize. I get to move around because I'm talking, so I don't notice, and I forget. But you could be lying down, as long as you weren't asleep. Even asleep, maybe you'd subliminally learn it very well. You could be sitting up, you could move around. When I say meditating together, sometimes we'll really sort of officially kind of meditate, but mostly we're learning, we're thinking. And we're in this presence of the jewel wish-granting gem tree and its radiation and its beautiful, luminous, rainbow-like jewel energies. So we're sort of in that, that's all. And you can be relaxed. Shift around, change your position if something aches. Don't worry about it. Now we look at equanimity, equality. In a certain sense, all beings are equal from the Buddhist point of view, because all beings have the Buddha soul. Not that there's some little fixed little golden platinum Buddha sitting somewhere in a little vacuum chamber somewhere in their heart, but in the sense that they're all free. Freedom is their nature of reality. And therefore they're all free of being fixated in any particular structure of ignorance and suffering. And therefore they have the evolutionary potential to achieve Buddhahood, perfection of evolution, the full opening of all of their abilities, compassionate and intelligent abilities. And given the infinite time that we all have to spend here in life, since we can never get away from awareness, its continuity, they all will inevitably become Buddhas. It's just a matter of when. In their own timelines, in their own perception of time. In Buddha's perception of time, since the future moment is all present, they already have all attained enlightenment. But he's aware also that it makes a huge difference to them in their timeline, whether it's sooner or later. And therefore the Buddhas, he and or she, because they are female Buddhas, the Buddhas make tremendous effort, even in their blissful leisure. They make tremendous effort to help beings accelerate their progress and their evolution toward Buddhahood. Similarly, particularly in relation to us, remember the beings around us on the bluff overlooking the Jewel Lake, the beings who are looking at us, the ones we love now are those who are nice to us now, are those who are kind to us, who do things for us, who make us happy. And therefore we love them. If they started being systematically nasty to us, we would not like them so much. And sooner or later we could become their enemies. And therefore just temporarily, just because of our own self-centeredness, we like those people who are nice to us. We think they're so great and we're so attached and so in love with them. Similarly, the ones who we don't know, it's because of our ignorance. They could be the nicest beings in the world. They'll all be Buddhas, which will be when they will be the nicest beings in the world. We just simply don't know about them, so we don't care about them. And the beings we hate, it's because they're nasty to us. Because they are mean, they have hurt us, they've injured us, they've insulted us, they've deprived us, they've been ungrateful to us. But that's because of our self-centered thing. We can't take a little abuse. We then create some sort of notion of some real implacable evil in someone who's a little mean to us. We create that, invest that in them paranoidly. In fact, those who we now hate have been our loved ones in the past. Those who we now love have been our enemies in the past. Those who we don't know have been both enemies and loved ones. And therefore, if we truly loved all of them, and if we truly understood their full vastness of each being, that each being is capable of total malevolence as well as total benevolence, and each being has been that way in many previous lives, because we've all been connected with all beings infinite numbers of times, then we would realize that they're all equally related beings. And we might as well positively think of them as all ones that we care about. Because after all, if even our worst enemy was really happy, that is to say, not happy by achieving some vengeance on somebody, which is never satisfying, that's where you then have to get more vengeance on the next one. But if they were really contented and happy, really felt all their orgasmic energy flowing within and this and that, well, they'd be nice to me. They'd stop being my enemy. So I really want them to be happy. Especially we want our enemies to be satisfied and happy, because then they'll leave us alone. And they might even be nice to us, then they'll suddenly seem nice to us. And the ones we don't know, we certainly want them to be happy, so they won't become enemies. They'll be happy and therefore be nice, share their happiness. And the loved ones, we already want them to be happy. So this equanimity is the foundation of the spirit of enlightenment, because the great love, the universal love, and the universal compassion, that is the thing we are seeking to conceive today, to generate today, the new soul we seek to give birth to today, must be universal. It must orient itself towards all beings. Cannot leave a single one out. Even Hitler, Genghis Khan, Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, any person you want to think of as the most evil person, you want them to be happy. You want them to be Buddha. Or you don't have the great love and you don't have the great compassion. You can't get it if you exclude anyone. So that is the first step of the 11-step process, the step of perfect equanimity. The second step then is very powerful and profound. It is called the step of mother recognition. It is based on coming into an awareness of the infinity of life. It is essential to have the vision of the continuity of life. It doesn't have to be any precise, exact version of transmigration or reincarnation or whatever. Christianity was born in a climate of transmigration of souls that was a mainstream idea that was commonly accepted. And it was only formally banned in Christianity in the 4th century. Judaism still has that idea, and Jewish rabbis will argue about this rabbi is the reincarnation of that rabbi and so forth, the transmigration of this or that rabbi. So they also believe in the continuity of souls. And although the theistic religions believe that the souls are created by God in a way, they sort of pre-exist. The theologians in them talk of their pre-existence of those souls in the infinity and eternity of God. So they don't even say really that the souls just had a first beginning at some point. That's just a way of talking. God creates them. But anything God creates pre-existed infinitely in himself. In a theistic view, if we deeply view what is God, the Creator, it is an infinity of being. You cannot say that God didn't know about the world in his mind before he created it. So in a sense, it always pre-existed in his mind. God didn't know about you before he created you. You can't say that. So you always pre-existed in God's mind. I don't know what you were doing there, but only God does. But the Buddhists have you existing in the world in different forms beginninglessly. The concept of a first beginning is fruitless. It's an egocentric attempt to reify our own sense of finiteness and sort of project it into the world and feel the world is just as finite as we are, so therefore we have some sort of importance in that world. In fact, if we open to the perspective of beginninglessness, then in a way we can kind of realize our infinitesimality. And in the same sense, our infinity, because of the vastness of our previous existence, whether it was in God's mind if we're a theist, or whether as a Buddhist, an evolutionist, it was in the ocean of evolutionary forms in this and that universe, before this Big Bang, another Big Bang, and before that another Big Bang, since there's an infinite succession of universes in different phases in the infiniverse. The essence of the realistic versus the unrealistic is the vision of the infinity of causality. That every cause has its effect. Every effect comes from a cause. And therefore there is no uncaused effect. And there is no effectless cause. And therefore everything is interconnected infinitely. And therefore we have been here infinitely, we will be here infinitely. Buddhism is not dogmatic in its verbal formulations about relative reality. They're always open to further development because freedom means that all descriptions of relative reality are hypotheses awaiting further evidence to be proven or disproven. They're not dogmatic laws. But the law of the infinite connectedness of everything is as close as you can get to a law of nature, however. And that is crucial because compassion depends upon it. You and I have been living here together in this world and in other worlds since beginningless time. That means infinitely. You and I have been related to each other in every single conceivable way. And you means all of you, all you infinite numbers of beings. You, the microbe who's crawling around my intestine now, as an egocentrically driven being, a delusion-driven being. You have infinitely been that. I have infinitely been that. I was a microbe in your intestine. But we also were human beings together, infinite times. We were enemies infinite times. We killed each other infinite times. We fought with each other infinite times. We didn't know each other infinite times. We were related intimately infinite times. And most important, the most altruistic way in which we relate to each other in sort of normal biology is when I was your mother. At that time, I let you live inside my body. I fed you with my blood and my vitamins and my calcium. And then I gave birth to you with great labor. And then I fed you with my breast and my milk. And I did that for you an infinite number of times. You did the same for me an infinite number of times. All of you did. Infinite number of times you gave me the human life. It's like you sacrificed your life for me, which is the most altruistic thing in our normal egocentric self versus other universe that someone can do for another is give their life for them. And it's much even easier just to die for them like a father does in a war as a soldier or something. That's quick and easy. Then you're reborn again off back at the clubhouse. But the mother gives her life as a daily investment. So the point is, all of you did that for me. We all did that for you. Infinite numbers of times. This is the meditation of mother recognition. It's impossible, of course, if you only identify yourself, even your continuity self, your relative self, as birth to death, end of it. Of course you have not been related to all beings. You had one mother. Deeply meditate on this. Take it in connection with your mother of this life. If you had trouble with your mother of this life on the personality level, try to go back to remember being at the warm breast, held in the loving cradle of the arms. And then try to see all the beings as your mother. This really works, by the way. I did do this mother one, and I got to this point where I would really have trouble in the subway. Because you get this weird deja vu thing with people. You meditate on the mother recognition, and you see a person, and they look like you met them. And you know how you sometimes look at someone, and you don't want to look away in case you do know them. You don't want to be rude, because you can't remember if you met them or not. You don't want to come on to them if you didn't know them, because then they'll think you're weird. So imagine you're in the subway walking, and suddenly everybody looks like your mother or something. And you're kind of deja vuing on everybody. It's sort of hard to get through the sea of faces. Because everyone looks like a familiar face. Familiarization. Every living being becomes familiar through the recognition of the mother. Third step. Remembering the kindness of the mother. And if you had trouble with your mother, if your mother handed you over to a governess, doesn't matter. And if you think of yourself as someone who no one ever was kind to because you came from a difficult family, you're still wrong. However difficult your family, you wouldn't be alive today if they didn't clean you, feed you, care for you, keep your blanket on, cure your colds. You would not be alive. Even though maybe you're a little demented because they were harsh with you, perhaps, you still are alive, and that took effort, and they gave you that effort. Point is, go back and remember your childhood. In the wish-granting gem tree, luminous energy, radiant jewel light field, you can quickly remember your infancies. Tears will come to your eyes. Hairs on the back of your neck will rise. You'll feel so sentimental. How kind my mother was to me. And then you diffuse that sentimental feeling of dependency of the small child, and diffuse that to every being as giving you the Kuchiku, and delighting in you, and seeking your happiness, and your comfort, and your satisfaction, and your pleasure. All they're living for. Looking at you with loving eyes, and you feel hackles rise in the back of your neck. After we get the sentimental feeling and tears come to our eyes, we move to the fourth step, which is the step of repayment of kindness, of gratitude. We have had equanimity, mother recognition, remembering of kindness, and then gratitude for the kindness, wish to repay it. And here we reflect on how we want to repay all these mother beings' kindness, how we want them to be happy and comfortable and not to suffer. And now that we know that the real way not to suffer is not just to grow up in a self-centered life, although that is a relative comfort, the real way is to achieve enlightenment and realize their selflessness and their true reality and their freedom, and achieve the deep upwelling inner bliss of freedom. And that's what we want. We want to be their mother of enlightenment now. The mother of all mothers. We want them to be free. That is how we will repay their infinite kindness. And that is therefore the fourth step of gratitude and repaying their kindness. This then leads to the fifth step in this system, the equal exchange of self and other, and we begin to add in here in the fifth step the idea that what do all beings want? We go back to the equality in a way of self and other, of myself and all my mothers. Now that I want to repay them, I then think of my equality with them. And I think that they want happiness, just as I want happiness. We're just the same. We don't want to suffer. Whether they're my enemy or they're my unknown person or my friend, they simply don't want to suffer and they want to be happy, and that's what I want. And then suddenly I realized there are so many more of them than there are of me. And I also realized that I have been looking for my own happiness all since beginningless time, and I have remained this egocentric being seeking my own happiness, preoccupied with my own state. What can I do? What can I get? How great am I? How much have I got? How happy am I? And it's never been satisfactory all this time. If I think back, when I have thought of others' happiness, I temporarily at least didn't worry about how unhappy I was. And at that time I realized that their happiness is more germane to me than my happiness. So I realized I'm going to try something new here. I'm going to switch my self-preoccupation for being preoccupied with them. I'm going to extend my mother gratitude repayment to them by being their mother, meaning thinking only of their happiness like a mother does. I'm going to adopt them as my children, all beings. And I'm going to exchange self-preoccupation for other preoccupation. It won't hurt me also at this point to think of the fact that the self-preoccupation I have been engaged in since beginningless time has not produced self-satisfaction, not a lasting one. Even as a human being, which relatively is a marvelous state of existence, relative to so many other life forms, even as a human being endowed with liberty and opportunity, which is the most wonderful evolutionary moment in a being's career, even that one is not really satisfying. And when I think of how satisfied I am, I'm never satisfied. I'm restlessly dissatisfied at all times. And that's pursuing the wish to be self-satisfied. Therefore, it's pursuing the motive and the drive of self-preoccupation, being driven by that. So it doesn't hurt to think that that drive of self-preoccupation has led me down every single time. And all I do is slave for my self-preoccupation. I try to go out and get what my self-preoccupation tells me I need and want, and it's never good, and it's never enough. And it never satisfies for more than a second. And even it doesn't satisfy a second when I'm thinking of how much it satisfies. So it doesn't hurt to put a little enlightened self-interest into this creation of altruism at this point, and to exchange self for other, as it said, to switch, become other rather than self, that is to say, become preoccupied and cherish the happiness of others rather than cherishing the happiness of self. So then I move on to the 6th step, which is the step of universal love. And in this step, I will all my happiness to them. I think of them having happiness and the cause of happiness. And I look at them, my mother beings, all my mothers, from the point of view of seeing them into happiness. And when I see them into happiness and I look for their happiness, all the beings, they look so lovely and beautiful to me. Because beings who are happy are beautiful. Beauty in a being, in fact, is happiness in that being. A being that is unhappy is not beautiful, even if objectively they have this or that proportion, or this or that cheekbone, or this or that whatever. There's something dull and something downcast and something no luster, and they are not beautiful. When they're angry, for example, the most seemingly well-proportioned, endowed person looks ugly. And therefore the beauty in the being is the being's happiness. And therefore when I look at the being's happiness, they look beautiful. This is the stage where I visualize all my mother beings as happy and beautiful. In a way, I let myself fall in love with them, therefore. Being in love with someone is when we want their happiness. It is not when we want to possess them for our happiness. That's possessiveness and desire. But when we're really in love with them is when we want their happiness. We forget about our happiness, and therefore, ironically, we get very happy because we don't reflect on how happy we are. It's when we forget about how happy we are that we become happy. And that's why people like to be in love, because when they are in love, then they just only focus on the beauty and the happiness of the other. And the moments when they stop to think if their love is requited, that's when they feel dissatisfied. That's when they feel unhappy. So this was the 6th step. The step of great love, universal love. Then the 7th step is universal compassion. Universal compassion then involves my looking at the beings, having been in love with them, a little bit withdrawing from just being in love with them and seeing them as lovely and happy in the sort of the rosy view of the lover, seeing the happiness of the beloved and the beauty of the beloved, and becomes more realistic, more like the doctor who looks at the health of the beloved and who sees, well, how happy really is the beloved, are all the beloved mother beings. And when I look at them And then I realized they don't have the mind of transcendence. They are preoccupied with their own self-fulfillment too much. They are chasing illusions of being happy. They are filled with the paranoid feeling of being the one, the self that is unappreciated by the universe. They are struggling with the universe. They are born infinitely again and again in unhappy lives and suffering and being eaten by other beings and consumed and exploited by them and abused by them. And even when they're gods, they just indulge themselves and waste their time, and then they're terrified when they must die as gods. And I use my meditation that we did yesterday of the suffering of all the different states of egocentric life in the universe, and I see that my mothers are always falling into those states endlessly. They wish their own happiness, but they act only to develop their own unhappiness. They are selfish, they're self-centered, and they're confused, and they're angry and impatient and irritated, and they never really have happiness. So I see that, my beloved, in fact, all my beloved mothers are not happy. And when I feel that, then I say, this is intolerable. They must be free of this suffering that they have, and they must have the cause of the freedom from that suffering. And when I feel that way deeply and intensely, this is the universal compassion. Compassion and love, therefore, are like two sides of a coin. The love wants to reach out and give my love to them, give my happiness to them, make them happy from my happiness. The compassion wants to reach out and take away their suffering from them and bring their suffering upon me from them. So they're like two sides of a coin, love and compassion. Once you really see the being as your mother, you really feel kin and familiar with all beings, then your way of connecting is through love you will your happiness to them. Through compassion you will their suffering to you. And you turn it into bliss and send it back as happiness. This is how you have the connection of love and compassion. The eighth step is thinking of the disadvantages of cherishing the self as opposed to cherishing others, and how this self-cherishing habit and self-preoccupation habit has led one endlessly and beginninglessly in the samsaric egocentric life states of endless frustration, of endless unfulfillment, of constant struggle with the universe. And the ninth stage is the stage of thinking of the advantages of other cherishing and realizing how others really are the source of all of one's happiness. For example, whenever one is really happy, it is because of the love of others. Whenever one does something and gives to others, one feels happy. Whenever one develops higher ethical sensitivity, it is because one thinks of others. Whenever one develops the greater strength of tolerance and patience, it's when others irritate one and one learns to overcome that. One thinks about what does one like about what one has. One has a ring that one loves. Somebody else made it. Somebody else found it and mined the diamond. Somebody else fashioned it into a beautiful ring. When one has clothes, this comes from fabric that someone else created, some mother living being. If it's wool, they grew that on their bodies as their fur, which was then shorn from them. And then they wove the wool, and then they made the cloth, and then they sewed it into the thing. And then if one has food, it's because some farmers prepared it, and somebody cooked it, and somebody shipped it in a truck and drove it there and stayed awake in the truck, etc., etc. Everything about our life comes from others. Our language, if we enjoy poetry and words, it is because of language, and language comes from others who communicated in previous generations. Even our body comes from the cells of parents. They develop genes over billions of life experiences of billions and billions of other beings. And so this body comes from others. Our mind comes from others. Our speech comes from others. There's actually nothing about us that doesn't somehow come from others. Therefore, they make it possible for us to also to become Buddhas. Without others to be compassionate for, we couldn't have compassion. Without others suffering, we would never feel compassion. Without developing compassion, we couldn't evolve to the state of Buddhahood. Wisdom alone would leave us too quiescent and too complacent, and we would never evolve the magnificent embodiment, the great giant butterfly, multiple butterfly embodiment of Buddhahood. And the bliss of Buddhahood we would never have if it wasn't for our communion with others. And therefore, there's the tremendous advantage in living fully aware of the real source of our happiness, which is others. They are like the wish-fulfilling gem tree. We think of a wish-fulfilling gem tree when we think of some exalted others, some mentors, the Buddha, the Bodhisattvas, Jesus, Mary, the goddess, the gods. We think of them as some others who are powerful and happy and able to make us happy and so forth. And so we have the jewel lights flowing from them, and we're in the wish-granting gem tree. But actually, ordinary living beings are a wish-granting gem tree, in fact, if we reflect upon it, because we only become wealthy, for example, karmically and evolutionarily by giving gifts. And if there was no one to receive the gift, we would not be able to develop generosity in giving, and we would not be able to evolve wealth and substance. We only become ethical by thinking of others and thinking how our acts affect them and imagining how they are and developing empathy and sensitivity. And therefore, through ethics, we develop the human life form. And without patience, we couldn't develop beauty, which is the root of beauty. It is the true source of beauty. Being beautiful or handsome is being patient in many, many lives. And you could never be patient if there weren't others who make you irritated, who injure you and harm you. And therefore others who bug are like a wish-granting gem. And we couldn't have creativity and effort and enterprise if there weren't others to spur us on to do these wonderful things like become a Buddha for their sake. And we couldn't have meditation and concentration even, because we wouldn't have others to distract us and from which we wanted to move away to develop concentration. And finally, we couldn't have wisdom of selflessness without others, because no one would be there to teach us of selflessness. Those like Nagarjuna and Buddha and others who had realized the great teaching of selflessness. And so the ninth state is the stage of reflecting on the advantages, therefore, of only thinking of the happiness of others. Finally, of course, there is the enlightened self-interest component. Only when we focus on the happiness of others and accomplish the happiness of others do we really feel happy. If we really think about life as when we are lifted out of ourselves and exalted in some way through our orientation toward others, that we're really happy. Whenever we preoccupy with ourselves, we're really unhappy. How happy am I? As soon as I think that, I feel unhappy, because it's never enough. And when I'm only thinking of how happy are they? Oh, it's great they're a little happy. I ignore my unhappiness. I forget about my little aches and wounds and pains, and I feel perfectly happy, directly or indirectly. So that's the ninth stage. And now we come to the 10th step, which is the step which I call messianic resolve, or high resolve, overflowing mind, overflowing inspiration. And this is the stage where we basically cultivate the Messiah complex, or the Messias complex, the feminine, where we reflect that I can't bear these mothers to suffer. I am only preoccupied with their happiness. I must accomplish their happiness. How can I accomplish their happiness? The Buddhas are already Buddhas. They have already accomplished Buddhahood. They supposedly, therefore, should be accomplishing these beings' happiness. Maybe on some level they will come to pass. Who am I to say? But anyway, it looks to me like they are still not happy. And therefore, I can't just rest content thinking, well, there's some other Buddhas out there who will take care of it. I myself must help them become happy. I myself must help them become free of suffering. It is my job to make them free of suffering and achieve happiness. It is my job to do it. I will be the one to save them. I vow to be the one to save them. I will not rest in all my future lives until I save them. And here is where we have to have the sense of the infinite future. When you have developed and cultivated, even you materialists who think of it only as a material process, please cultivate past the next big crunch, the next big bang, and feel that the cells and the energies will go on, and in some sense that will be you, so you'll have time to do this. Because if you think of death as an automatic obliteration, death as a self-centered nirvana in that sense, unrealistic nirvana, if you think of that, then you can't feel the messianic resolution. You have to think that the messianic vow to save all beings from suffering is only insane because you wouldn't have time. But if you are intertwined with all beings, if the matter of the universe, or in the Buddhist sense, all the intertwined lives of the living individual beings, the souls intertwined of the beings, go on infinitely into the future, then we'll be interacting with each other again and again. We'll be in each other's faces again and again. Sooner or later, I will be there in such a way, and I will interact with you in such a way, and I will love you in such a way, and I will be compassionate with you in such a way that I will enable you to achieve happiness and the cause of happiness. I will become a Buddha who will be able to help you do that. I have infinite time. We're going to be locked together in this infinite universe, me with all my infinite mother beings, and therefore I might as well optimize our infinite interconnectedness. Why not? If you're going to be infinitely there with people, you can't get away from them. Why not be there with them in the best possible way, where you and they are totally focused on each other's happiness, rather than totally in conflict with each other. And therefore you optimize that situation. You become Buddha, they become Buddha. And here we then think of the three ways of becoming a Buddha. It is said, like a shepherd, like a pilot or a ferry boatman, or like a king or a queen. And the shepherd is the one who herds the flock into the pasture and then comes in last and closes the gate. So that's where you make the vow that you will not become free of all suffering and enlightened and so forth until you've helped all beings become that. The second one is like a ferry boat. You'll all arrive at the other shore of freedom from suffering together, although you're piloting the ship. And the third one is the king. You actually will be crowned king. You will take the responsibility of the king. That is, you will first become a Buddha, and then as a Buddha you will establish all of them in Buddhahood. And of these three metaphors, it is said, analogies, it is said, that emotionally the Bodhisattva prefers the first, where they go last into permanent bliss, into exquisite, constantly transforming but eternal bliss. Last, become a Buddha last. So emotionally that's the superior. Second best is to be the ferryman or ferry person. And third best is to be the king or queen. From the point of view of the compassion, dedication, but from the point of view of realistic methodology, of course, the last is the best. So that brings to the 11th step. And the 11th step is the recognition that it takes a Buddha to help other beings to become free and enlightened. Without being fully free and enlightened myself, how could I possibly help others to become fully free and enlightened effectively through the last stages of the process at least? I might help them, inspire them, share with them some inspiration, but to really help them accomplish it, I have to be a Buddha myself. Therefore, the 11th step is, I will become a Buddha for the sake of all living beings, out of my preoccupation with their happiness, because being a Buddha is the only way to effectively assure the accomplishment of their happiness. It is said that the 10th step, the step of messianic resolution, which Western psychology, of course, based on the limited length of life of the individual and the obliteration of the individual at death, considers like a form of dementia, the Messiah complex, is like a form of dementia. And when you meditate on the messianic resolution, the high intention, the magnificent intention, so to speak, to save all beings, you should feel an intensity like a mad person, like a madman, a person who can't bear sort of conventional wisdom. Well, later they'll get enlightened. Well, sometime they'll be Shambhala, will come in the future. Or the Buddha land, they'll go to Amitabha's Buddha land. Or heaven, New Jerusalem will come later, etc. No, the messianic resolution is like an apocalyptic madness where now we have to achieve Buddhahood to be able to help them become free of suffering and the cause of suffering. Now I can't bear my mother's dwelling in this suffering. I can't bear those of my mothers who have fallen to the hells. I can't bear those who have fallen to the preta-lokas of hunger and thirst. I can't bear those who have fallen in the animal realm of one eating another. I can't bear those who have fallen in the human realms of mutual conflict, mutual exploitation, mutual destruction. I can't bear them to waste their time idling in the heavenly realms of self-indulgence and idle pursuits of ultimately unsatisfactory pleasures. I must help them become Buddha now, become free of suffering, and have the cause of the freedom from suffering now. And therefore, you must feel that like a kind of a mad person, mad woman or mad man, where you're not content with sort of conventional institutionalized measures, so to speak. But then that madness sort of gets channeled into the vow to become a Buddha for the sake, and calms by remembering that many beings, in fact infinite numbers of beings, already are Buddhas and have already felt this kind of messianic intolerance of the suffering of others, and have gone to that intensity and that determinedness, and have become Buddhas for the sake of beings and are doing maximum effort for their sake. And so it's not that they're still in an infinite frame of reference. There's always more to be added to maximum. There's no finite maximum. So I will add mine to that. And I will bring those beings I have karmic connection to, and I will accelerate their progress to enlightenment by becoming a Buddha myself. When we reflect this way, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas and the prophets and the gods and the goddesses and the angels and Jesus and Mary and Muhammad and Lao Tzu and Confucius and Krishna and Sita and Radha and Uma and Shiva and Rama and Plato and Socrates, Pythagoras, Newton, Descartes, Galileo, all of them shining happy in the refuge tree, glistening and glowing, that we have had even the simulation, even the imagination of having this magnificent new outlook on life, this new will, this new spirit. They radiate more diamond, ruby, emerald, jewel light rays to us. We fill up and glow with this light energy. It radiates from us to all the beings around us in the burst of fabulous connection and dedication and gratitude and encouragement. It is said there are 22 similes of this moment in our evolutionary life. Many of us may have already achieved this in previous lives, have given birth to the spirit of enlightenment, what's called the conception of the spirit of enlightenment, which this 11-step process is designed to help us do, and infallibly will do if we do each step carefully and thoroughly. It is like a moment in the evolution of a being that is like birth. This is really the second birth in Buddhism. This is to be born again in the family of the Buddhas, as a child, as a daughter or a son of the Buddhas. I like to say it's like suddenly living with your heart turned inside out. Heart on your sleeve, we say in English, but sort of, it's an inside-out heart on your sleeve. Normally the heart is closed in on itself. It beats for my own self, my own blood, oxygen, life, pleasure, profit, fame, whatever. My own self-preoccupation drives my life and the life of all beings. And even we say that's natural. And even there are theories of biology that say it's inevitable and no one cannot be like that. There is no such state beyond that. But Buddha biology, Buddha evolution, the Buddhist science of biology, which is a science, it's not a religious thing, it's a scientific thing, claimed this is completely false. The human being is the being, in fact, whose heart, sort of inside, outside, are almost at the turning point anyway, naturally. Because of our empathy, because of our ability, because of our bearing of the young within our bodies. All mammals in a way, but then humans as the most self-reflective of mammals. When you have your young within, you realize that the boundary of self and other, the skin, is a permeable thing. And the reason we have language is that we can inhabit each other's minds. We can think in each other's minds by talking to each other. We can embrace the mind of another in our mind by listening to what they say, by communicating. Our communication is a way of entering each other's minds. So we're at that boundary between self and other. That is our strength as a human, our social strength, in fact, that we can live in others and through others. Of course, we can pervert that into racism and groupism and fanaticism and what have you, and intolerance of out-group people. We can pervert that. Opportunity comes from that. And when we conceive the spirit of enlightenment, the will to enlightenment and the spirit of enlightenment, that is when we fulfill our humanness to its ultimate extent. Because then we actually acknowledge that we live empathetically. And we live cherishing the happiness of others, whether it's our family, our community, our nation, our race, our species, all living beings on all planets. This changes completely all of our future lives. A vast, infinite future infinitely changes with this orientation change. Because we suddenly are all the beings by at least spirit, by at least will. We imitate the actual awareness of a perfect Buddha, where he or she feels themselves as all the other beings, every bit as much as feeling within their own particular skin of any particular emanation that they have. In fact, they get so much into this cloud-like multiple embodiment possibility that they can be many beings simultaneously and still feel themselves the other beings that are not them, in some sense, because they feel they are not them. They are isolating themselves. In a way, really, they are them. All other beings are Buddhas, but their sense of alienation is honored. The Buddha doesn't force them, you gotta be me. They are them. But they will only be happy when they feel they are all other beings. So the spirit of enlightenment is not just some sentimental, I wanted this, I'll save all beings. If you really are believing that it's impossible. No one can take a bodhisattva vow without the infinite sense of infinite continuity of life and infinite connectedness of life. Because you can't mean that you're going to save all beings if you have only a short time until your death. You can't mean it. You can say it in a Zen center. You can say it in a Dharma center. You can say it in church. But you can't mean that because you don't believe it's possible. This turning inside out of the heart, it is simply realistic. Within the awareness, however much you can expand with critical effort, your awareness of being vast and continuous and also interwoven with others vastly and continuously. Once you feel that, then to live for those others and to embrace them and adopt them as your body is only realistic. But it's called at this stage a spirit of enlightenment. It isn't enlightenment because it's a matter of vow. It's a matter of will. It's not yet a matter of full awareness, full realization, but it is a realization too. In a way, it has the infinity of the realization even in the vow. The spirit of enlightenment has two forms. One is called the aspiring spirit. That is a wish, that is an aspiration, that is a will. And that we've gone through today, and even now we can even have that. If we think it's possible. If we have the sense of the continuity of life and the vastness of it, at least suspend disbelief that it is possible. And then we have that inspiration, actually. We have the spirit of enlightenment as an inspiration. To have it as what is called the venturing spirit of enlightenment or the activated spirit of enlightenment, which is a really great thing to have. Because once we have that, even when we're not thinking that way, we are getting the benefit as if we think in that way. we make a vow. We actually take the vow, I will become a Buddha for the sake of all beings, to establish them in happiness and to provide them with the causes of happiness. And we do that in a formal ceremony so that it becomes like a real promise and a vow. And we shouldn't do that, of course, until we're sure we can keep that. And that's where we will begin in the next session. We will look at the issue of taking that vow, of really embarking on the whole new infinity of life. Life as a bodhisattva, life within the Buddha family, life as a child, as the son or daughter of the Buddha, of all the Buddhas, which is our new clan, our new family, our new race, the Buddha race, you could say, that we can join in this second birth through conceiving the spirit of enlightenment, combining the exchange of self and other teaching with the sevenfold mother recognition teaching, and implementing it and practicing it, and then finally performing it, as we have done today together as an omen in this sort of rapid form. Remember that each one of the steps in the 11 steps you could spend a month, a year, you could spend a lifetime on. But although the Buddhas would be unhappy to waste so much time, maybe a week would be good, or a day on each one, and we've done them all in a session to just begin the process, or refresh the process if many of us have already done this type of thing or similar type of thing, to refresh that process. So now that we have done that, the beings in the wish-granting gem tree refuge field are overjoyed. They're so overjoyed, in fact, they can't stand it anymore. And they melt just totally into light. And the whole refuge field just becomes a splash of light, of diamond, emerald, ruby, sapphire, topaz light, flows down from the refuge tree, and the refuge tree itself melts into light, and the lake at the top of the world melts into light, and the island, and the bluff, and all dissolves into us. And we become one with the refuge field, with all the mentor beings, the enlightened beings. And then we feel really terrific and buoyant and illuminated and insightful and inspired, enthusiastic. And then we dedicate all of that benefit and merit from contemplating this to all living beings. We right away invest the merit and the virtue of it with them. We give it away to them. It's that we give this happiness to them, and we melt into light. And as light, we merge one by one individually in every way with all of these beings and become indivisible from all of the living beings, friends, enemies, unknown beings. And then at a certain moment they wonder, like, where the heck did they all go? And then we arise again from space in our ordinary self, ordinary body-mind complex, ordinary environment, setting, having concluded the third session of the Tibet's Wish-Granting Gem Tree Retreat.
This concludes Session 3 of the Jewel Tree of Tibet with Robert Thurman. Our program continues with Session 4.